This video contains spoilers for Daredevil Born Again episodes 1 through 3. Hey, what's up? I'm Channel Pup, and welcome to Raw Doggin', a new series of barely scripted, barely edited discussion videos like in the days of old. Because I've got stuff on my mind that I want to talk about, and I need to get content out the door as well. I'm kind of dying over here. That's what makes your subscription and potential Patreon pledges very important. Nah, but really, I do appreciate everyone that does that. Anyway, let's jump straight into the discussion. So Daredevil Born Again is the new 4th season / sort of quasi-reboot of the Daredevil TV series, 7 years after Netflix cancelled the original iteration of the show in its 3rd season. Confession time though, I am a fake fan. I'm not fully caught up with Daredevil. It was 100% my intention to catch up by the time Born Again dropped, but life gets in the way, and I only ended up watching the 1st season, which, by the way, I get why people would hold this show in very high regard. Season 1 of Daredevil is absolute peak television, and one of the best things that Marvel have ever put out. Seriously, I absolutely adored that 1st season of Daredevil. We had incredible characters with Matt, Foggy, Karen, Wilson Fisk and his right-hand man Wesley, and it was a show that really explored these very clearly defined characters and their very clearly defined motivations, and it explored them with the utmost sincerity and tenderness as well. Like, Daredevil Season 1 is the antithesis to projects like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania or Captain America: Brave New World. Those are films that have no interest in their characters and their world building and just tell a quick, disposable, and not unpleasant story. Daredevil Season 1 is the absolute opposite of that. It is so rich in terms of its character, its plot, its filmmaking decisions as well. Now, having only seen that brilliant 1st season, with Born Again, I can safely say I haven't felt lost, and so far the show is very good. But I'd been kind of following the developments in run-up to the launch of Daredevil Born Again. This was kind of fascinating to me, even though I hadn't seen the original Daredevil for quite some time. I was always fascinated by Daredevil Born Again, because we're seeing a Marvel project make the transition from Netflix to Disney+. Now, obviously, Marvel Studios did produce Daredevil for Netflix. It wasn't a Netflix production. But when your distributor changes, there are going to be changes to the overall project. The other thing is that Marvel Studios are not what they used to be back when they were producing Daredevil 7 years ago. The final season of the original Daredevil premiered before Avengers Endgame released, which was the tipping point for the MCU for a lot of folks. So the question is, what kind of changes would we anticipate? Would there be a reduction in quality? Would it be that homogenized MCU filmmaking style? Would it take that same amount of interest in the characters? Can modern Marvel Studios make a project that lives up to one of the greatest projects they've ever made? So I remember shortly after Daredevil Born Again was announced, it was super controversial. There was a lot of backlash from fans to the direction that Born Again was originally taking. The big sticking point was no Foggy or Karen. They are written out. And I remember my housemate, who's a huge Daredevil fan, saying to me as we were re-watching Daredevil Season 1, imagine wanting to bring this show back and not bring back Foggy and Karen, two of the pillars that made the original show as great as it was. And I can fully get behind that perspective. Like, it's the human interest which is what elevates Daredevil above so many other superhero projects. It is simply the best at what it does. And Foggy and Karen were a huge part of that. So yeah, I understand. No Foggy or Karen, that doesn't sound like a good idea on paper. And it was going to be more of a courtroom procedural drama with less of the Daredevil stuff. But then, in response to the fan backlash to this, a lot of folks involved in the production of Daredevil Born Again spoke out about a major overhaul of the series. A new version, a Daredevil Born Again 2.0, if you will. They'd gone back to the drawing board, and that was the talking point I heard repeated a lot, is we've gone back to the drawing board. Well, 3 episodes of Daredevil Born Again are out at the time that I speak right now. And we've got Foggy getting killed off, leading to Matt almost killing Bullseye, leading to Matt giving up Daredevil. We've got Karen leaving to San Francisco, so she's no longer in it. And then almost the entirety of the third episode has centered around Matt defending White Tiger in court after his actions accidentally led to the death of a cop on the subway. And I think this is all a huge cocktail of, why the fuck you lying? As this is literally everything the fans were worried it would be, but also, let them cook. I can understand why 7 years after the original show was cancelled, all of this on paper would be the opposite of what a longtime fan would want to hear. It's been 7 years since you last saw this gang, and now they're bringing it back only to take a load of elements away and change a load of stuff? Like, what's the point? I really do get that. On paper, that doesn't sound good. At the same time, it's resulted in some damn good TV. While Foggy and Karen's roles have been put on ice, the show does have a great sense of focus on Matt and Wilson Fisk, who's now the mayor of New York. A lot of what I loved about Daredevil Season 1 is still present here. It's still the human interest first. It's still a character exploration first and foremost. It's just that rather than exploring the dynamics between Matt and his support unit of Foggy and Karen, we're instead focusing on a time in Matt's life where he's lost. Karen's moved away to San Francisco while Matt stayed back in NYC, but there's a real tangible sense that he's really far from anything resembling home. It wasn't just about the location, it was about the life that he lived, the people that he had in it, and the world of Daredevil Born Again is tangibly different to the world of the original Daredevil, at least the Season 1 that I saw anyway. Now, this does mean that Foggy's death actually does have a tangible impact on the show and leads to great new stories for Matt operating solo now. We also spend a lot more time with Fisk as well, who claims to be reformed, but he's still the same old Wicked Willy he was before. Episode 2 spends a great deal of time with him, which is always good news, because Fisk is a great villain. And we can see that his marriage with Vanessa is very much on the rocks. Yes, believe it or not, marital problems. Vanessa must have been drowning in Fisk's unparalleled riz.
Vanessa, I've been through a very hard lot in life. Everything is very serious, Vanessa.
He's like the least charismatic person I've ever seen, but I'm gonna fucking jump his bones. But he's still a simp. Never change, Wicked Willy, never change. But in that regard, it's the same as ever. We've got great characters that the writers clearly understand inside out, and it feels like these characters have effectively written themselves. Everything flows beautifully. We're also seeing great new supporting characters come into the fold, such as Bibi Urich, the niece of Ben Urich, a character I'd grown pretty attached to back in Season 1. And Bibi is investigating Mayor Fisk, her clearly not knowing that he's the one who iced her Uncle Ben.
He was a good journalist.
Or maybe she does and she's withholding that. I don't know. Who knows where this is going to go? And real quick, I do want to talk about the filmmaking here, as that's another thing that I was worried about. They're going for a much cleaner look for this incarnation of the show than they did with the Netflix version, at least Season 1, which I have seen. Season 1 was full of super high contrast, lots of yellow and blue lighting, had a very dramatic look to it, and I loved that. They even had a little bit of filmic grain on there, even though I'm pretty sure it was still shot on digital. I think the first seasons of Daredevil were shot on Reds, which are digital cinema cameras, so things like noise and grain are something that probably would have been added in post. The point is, I thought Daredevil Season 1 was an absolute marvel to look at. Marvel Studios projects now can look a little homogenized these days with that very flat digital look, very clean. And I'll say this, it's a lower contrast, much more clearly lit show than the Netflix version. But I don't think this has been done for the sake of MCU homogenization, which is what I was worried it would be, so much as it's been done to service the tone and feel of the show. Matt isn't in a little startup business living in a dingy flat in Hell's Kitchen. He lives in a nice apartment now. He's part of a bigger law firm now. It's a little less characterized and a lot more sterile and kind of legitimate looking. And I think this has been done because, well, while yes, Matt has technically moved up in the world, there's clearly something missing. And what's interesting is for scenes such as the ones in jail with the White Tiger, or when Matt is facing Fisk as Fisk looks down at him from atop the roof, having won the mayoral election, this is when the overall look of the show falls much more in line with the Netflix version, as the lighting becomes a lot more expressive. It's never as high contrast, and I don't know if it's ever going to be, but I do feel confident that all of these filmmaking choices have been deliberate choices in service of the story, rather than just MCU homogenization like I feared. And the reason why BB Erik prompted me to discuss the filmmaking of this show is because when we cut to BB Erik's show, it's shot a lot more like an indie news report. It's in 4:3, it's grainy, it's handheld, there's lots of shots of the city. But this is a really cool narrative device that kind of brings us up to speed with what is going on in Fisk's New York and what the public know. I think this is a superb storytelling device. Absolutely loving this from a filmmaking perspective. Getting back to the storyline though, there are interesting things happening with the Punisher. We've seen how cops were beating someone and White Tiger stepped in to help, got into a scuffle which led to one of the cops getting killed on the subway tracks. And we see that in court, the cops play a super dirty game here, turning that death into a big agenda. And we've got a lot of corrupt cops that are sporting Punisher insignias. Now this is getting really interesting, because in the real world, yeah, the Punisher insignia kinda did get assimilated by the Blue Lives Matter movement, which was a reactionary movement to the Black Lives Matter movement, where it was like, black people shouldn't get killed. Well, contrary to that, cops shouldn't get killed. It's a movement that fundamentally misses the point of its opposition, and its rejection of the actual context just translates to police officers should get to kill whoever they want. Now, I know people really don't like it when comic book YouTubers get political, but how else am I actually supposed to talk about this storyline? And back in 2022, Marvel did kinda respond to this by giving the Punisher a brand new logo to avoid associations with the Blue Lives Matter movement. This show seems to be tackling this head on, with bent cops in NYC sporting that insignia. We've got Matt Murdock getting beaten up by a bunch of cops sporting this insignia. Speaking of which, the action in this show is just as good as it was in the Netflix version. The fight between Matt and the cops was just awesome. I loved the fight between Daredevil and Bullseye as well. Like, there's definitely less of this element, what with Daredevil being put on the back burner, but what is here is still really cool. But after winning the trial, White Tiger is also shot by a cop sporting the Punisher insignia. Although I think the show wants us to believe that that's actually the Punisher for now. It's like, oh no, what has Frank done? No, it's a cop. There's no way that's the Punisher. And we are no doubt going to see the Punisher again in the story. It looks like the direction this is taking is reclamation. We're going to see all these cops abusing their power, sporting this insignia, while the real deal Frank Castle is out there and he's going to set the record straight. With this show kind of serving as a big middle finger to the Blue Lives Matter movement, which is something I can easily get behind. This is a fascinating turn for the story to take, but is one that I think is going to work wonderfully for this show. But then there are some things that I'm also kind of pondering, one of which is, when will Matt return to being Daredevil? I feel like we're already seeing the road to this, as I think Matt has seen firsthand the importance of vigilantes in White Tiger and the testimonies in his favor. I suspect that he's going to put the red suit back on at the end of the season, with this serving as a form of second origin story for him. He's born again. At the same time, maybe it would be a shame to just bung all of the Daredevil stuff at the very end of the show. Either way though, I think it's going to be in that back half. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. Or episode 4, fuck me, okay, like the trailer just dropped and I was completely wrong about that, it seems. But then there's also the matter of Foggy's death, because while I do think it sets up a really cool story for this season, I would hate for them to have killed off Foggy for a plot device. And B, usually when you kill off a character, I think the best thing to do is mean it, keep them dead. But at the same time, this does put future seasons of the show in a pretty unenviable position, having to move things forward without a character that was really integral to the success of the original version of the show. Maybe they just have a lot of courage going forward. Like, maybe they got balls of steel, who knows? I've heard some theories that he could have faked his death for witness protection, but then again, why did all those other characters die? Are they also in witness protection? Like, this was a mass killing incident. I don't think that's how witness protection fake deaths work. So it's like, if they do bring him back later, it's gonna be that predictable old thing of, oh, the main characters always come back. But if they don't, the show is in a very awkward position going forward for stories after this one. But then again, maybe Born Again can sell everyone on a foggyless Daredevil. So far, so good, I would say. Brad Winterbaum has said that we will be seeing more of Foggy and Karen in the next season of Daredevil Born Again, which almost kind of screams damage control to me. Why reveal that now otherwise? But if they are bringing Foggy back, then they need to carefully consider this. If you say multiverse, if you mention multiverse in the same sentence as Daredevil Marvel, please shut the fuck up. I know it's set in the MCU, but just no. There have been a couple of Spider-Man references that I did pick up on. One of them more explicit than the other. We did have Fisk mentioning people in spider costumes. But then when they were listing off officers in the courtroom, they did list off an Officer Morales. Now, NYC is a big place, but I'm just saying that when it's a New York cop, it does kind of narrow it down a little bit. It could be deliberate, or it could be a little reference to Miles' dad. And I'm gonna be real, I think after MCU Spider-Man 4, it would be a perfect time to introduce Miles Morales. But okay, those are my quick thoughts on Daredevil Born Again so far. I'm really happy with how the show is going, and I think we're in for a great season of television, but I don't think they've put themselves in the easiest position in the world going forward. So I'm very intrigued to see how they'll swing this. But I'm gonna hand it over to you guys now. What do you think? Comment below, discuss. And as always, if you've enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, be sure to hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below is the link to my Patreon page, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name in the credits of my videos, as well as occasional early access, ad-free videos that you can download and watch anywhere, and exclusive content. A special shout out goes to the patrons in the $5 and above tier. They are Silver, Josh Strider, Grant Allen, Zach Brakowski, Twilord, Coco210, Hey It's Classy, Joe Henshin, KB, RT0, Carlex, Sad Goku, Dare Denny, SSS06, Kale Bennett, top comment, next video picks my name. Alright. Ken K, and Mr. SP, Cirrus the Skeptic, Biotin, and Vera Wild. See, putting "and" before Mr. SP really threw me off for a second there. That's really subtle. Thank you, folks, so much for your generosity, and to all of you at home, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Now get out of here.